Well, hello, everybody, again. My name is Bill,
And my name is Trevor,
and
and
this
this is
is
Bill and Trevor's
Excellent
Excellent Adventure. Welcome back.
Welcome back indeed. So, last time we were talking about this theme of being a witness.
Yes.
And so, I want to talk a while about witness and about information management and how a person should manage what they choose to believe.
Mm,
And not just in a theological basis. I mean, you cannot go through life without having to make these kinds of choices. Most people just do them without thinking. I want to talk about how do you tell. So, when somebody tells you something, you should pretty much assume that they're trying to manipulate in some way because they want you to believe something.
mhm.
Now, not all manipulation is evil, but if I'm trying to produce an effect on you so that you have a certain response, that's pretty much the definition of manipulation.
Yeah.
So somebody's trying to do that. The first thing you should check before you put it into the truth bucket. In my mind, you got three buckets in the brain. You've got the lies bucket, you got the truth bucket, and you got the maybe bucket.
Mm,
You don't have to put it in truth or falsehood. You might just want to put it into the maybe bucket and reevaluate it later when you get more information to work with.
mm.
So, when somebody is trying to sell you something or tell you something, the first thing you need to check is what's their motivation. You need to look at what do they stand to gain or lose if you choose to believe or accept what they're telling you. For example, if I'm going to say three words and I want you to tell me what comes to mind.
Okay.
Used car salesman.
Mm. Liar. That's
Why is that?
well, they usually I have a deep knowledge of cars and a lot of things like that. So usually if it's a used car salesman, they're trying to upsell you a car that's nowhere near the price.
Yeah.
And they're usually trying to get rid of the junk that they don't think they'll ever be able to get rid of if they find someone that is gullible enough
So what's their motivation? Why are they doing that?
to make money.
To make money. So if somebody is going to be monetizing something based on whether your choice is, immediately that should say,
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean they're lying,
Hmm.
but it should make you say, What are some other things that you can use to assess whether you should choose to believe somebody?
Well, I would definitely, besides motivation, honestly, I'd like to see, let's see, if someone's trying to get you to believe something, not even just their motivation, but what happens to you if you believe this thing.
Well, that we'll go in there later, but
Go
no,
on there later.
right now I just wanted to talk about evaluating the witness.
Like,
You said something in the last episode. I was hoping you were going to bring that up.
oh, we're talking about character,
Well, you're talking about track record before you got to character.
track record. Yes, let's go track.
So let's talk about track record.
Let's do it. Okay.
You talk about track
I'll
record.
talk about track record. So, well, if someone's trying to get me to believe something, and I don't really have any examples that come to mind, but if someone's trying to get me to believe X thing, usually I look at the person and say, well, who are you and why should I believe this thing? And are you a credible person? Are you someone that has got a good track record for things? Or are you usually on what I said last episode was the right side and the wrong side of whatever happens? Are they usually on the right side or are they usually on the wrong side? If they're usually on the wrong side, I would probably tend to go, But if they're on the right side, I could be a little bit more inclined. But like you said, things should go mostly into the maybe bucket because why would we believe things that everybody just wants us to believe? You know, that's
I-
also
I
a
don't-
question.
And I like the way you put that because it was different from the way I would have put it, but I like it better because you don't have to assume evil.
Mm-hmm.
They could simply be mistaken.
Mm.
They could be sincerely wrong.
Yeah.
But what you look at is, are they often sincerely wrong? Because some people are just not careful about what they choose to believe. And so they choose to believe it and they tell it to you with all honest, good intent. They're just wrong.
Mm.
And so you have to have a certain level of objectivity and say to yourself, okay, what about my good friend Joe? Is he often right or is he often wrong?
Yeah, if Joe is often wrong, I have a couple of good friends that are Joe. And I do know that they have the best intentions for me, but they're just wrong. unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we can talk about character.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about character.
Well, character, if someone is just a flat out liar, probably never gonna believe them without at least maybe if it's something that sounds even remotely credible, then I'll be like, okay, maybe I'll look this one up. But most of the time, I'll probably blow it off.
Yeah, not even bother to
Not
check.
even bother. I'll probably just be like, ah, it's cool, Joe. Thanks, but that's true.
Well, Joe's the one who's sincerely wrong. You got to make up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Chuck.
Chuck. Thank you, Chuck.
Chuck is just chuck it on out there.
It's perfect. I'm just chucking it out of my head.
Oh. But I like to say liars tell lies. Gullible people believe and spread them. And if you are not careful about what you put in the truth bucket, you will become one of them.
That's the truth. That's a good one.
So let's come up with some examples. We'll probably offend all kinds of people here.
Let's do it.
But if you can think of, well, here's one that should not offend too many people because it should be obvious. Let's talk about the internet.
Haha. Yes. Ooh. Yeah.
I remember this was years ago, back when we watched stuff on television.
Mhm.
And there was this commercial. I even forgot what they were selling, but they had this guy, and he was slovenly. He was overweight. He was not well dressed. It was very sloppy in his appearance. His hair wasn't combed. Had a long beard. Wasn't trimmed. And there was another guy who was pretty normal looking guy, and then there was this woman who was pretty cute. And whatever it was that she and the normal guy were talking about, this slovenly guy comes up and says, "Oh, that's my date." And the normal guy looks kind of incredulous, and she says, "He's a model." And the guy's, "What?"
Uh, okay.
And somewhere in this conversation, they were talking about something she was saying, and the guy says, "Why do you believe that?" She says, "I read it on the internet."
Ah,
And he says, "And that makes it true?" And she says, "Yeah, everything on the internet is true." He says, "Where'd you hear that?" And she replies,
the internet. Oh God.
"Most people's information consumption today is through the internet."
Yep.
So let's apply these principles you just discussed
Mhm.
to the internet.
Okay. Oof.
Let's talk about first money.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
When you consume, where do you get your information from?
Well, I try to look for more neutral sources. I try to avoid Google as well because I don't know if people know this, but you can pay Google to put you towards the top of search.
Yes.
But I try to avoid Google or most search engines for that matter, honestly. But I try to get neutral sources that don't bias on one side or the other.
Name one.
Name one. Ground News is one of them. I try at least. They'll give you a bunch of things and they'll tell you how much of the coverage is this side, and what's neutral.
Yeah.
And then you try to go for all the neutral things. And then some of them, unfortunately, don't have neutral. So you just look at both and try to make a conclusion. But
Are you the guy who got me started on Ground News? I have another friend that pointed that out to me. I've been consuming that lately.
I don't know if I got you started on it, but you have asked me before and you said you were going to look into it. So,
Yeah, well, I'm subscribed now.
oh, there you go.
Okay, name me another one. I'm going to talk about Ground News shortly.
Perfect. Another one. I don't know.
Do you
That's
do
just-
any kind of social media?
No.
Not even YouTube?
I'm on YouTube, but I don't go on YouTube for information. And YouTube is entertainment.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what a lot of people don't get.
Yeah.
Anything that is social media is being engineered with an algorithm. And the way all of these algorithms work is they use artificial intelligence to try to figure you out. And they figure out what are you interested in and what are you likely to consume.
Mm.
And they will feed you stuff that they think you will want to read. Why do they do this?
Money.
Because money. Somebody famous, don't ask me who, because I don't know who said it, but somebody famous said, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
That's really smart.
And so the point to these things is that advertisers get to sell you stuff if you're looking at this media often enough. What most people don't realize is that if they're consuming social media, it is at best entertainment.
Mhm.
It is not reliable source because the reason you're seeing it has nothing to do with whether it's true. You're seeing it because the algorithm figured out that you would see it.
Mhm.
But what about the source that generated the material?
The source that generated material might not be bad, but usually with the internet, it just kinda you ever played the game, the telephone game? Yeah, that's what the internet's like.
Yeah.
There's one thing that's said that's true, and then it gets whispered into a bunch of people's ears, and everybody comes out on the other end with something completely different.
Well, there's that. The thing I'm getting at, though, is that a lot of times you don't really know the human being that's behind the account
That
that,
too.
that supplied the input.
That's too. Yeah.
And so if you don't know who it is, you're not in a position to assess where their financial interests lie.
That is also true.
You're also not able to assess their character because you don't know who it is.
Mhm.
And best, you might be able to tell what is this individual's track record over time. But the only way you're going to do that is if you're conscientiously keeping up with these different sources, and you better have a system because you're not going to remember.
Yeah.
And then you have to have some other source to validate whether what they're saying is consistent with what everybody else in the world can record.
Yeah.
That's a big challenge. Most people are not up to it. And yet, the reason our politics is so polarized in this country right now is because people are reading feeds that are sent to them because the algorithm has already figured out which side of the dividing wall they're on,
Yep.
and they just keep feeding them stuff, and they have no idea who the stuff is coming from or how to assess its content, its validity.
Yep.
Let's talk about ground news.
Okay.
For those that don't know, I just started reading ground news, and they will take an event and they will try to summarize the event. But what's really interesting about ground news is they are polling lots of different sources. And I guess they're using AI to try to consolidate what are these different sources saying.
Mm.
And they try to abstract what are the objective facts that pretty much everybody says are true.
Mhm.
But then it gives you a recording of who's talking about it.
Yep.
And it's very interesting to see that breakdown.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, what do they stand to gain or lose? If they stand to gain money, right away, that makes their motive suspect because people without integrity will do anything to get money. What about their track record? Now, a long, long time ago, there used to not be an internet, and information was the prerogative of the educated. And since it was a relatively small set of people, they had conventions about how they would acknowledge one another.
Mhm. Mm.
And so, for example, if you were a scientist or a physician or a researcher of that kind, you would try to get your conclusions accepted by your peers by writing them up in a paper. You would have to describe the experiments you performed that other people can perform too, so that they can see whether they got the results you got.
Yeah.
And then you can say, these are the conclusions that I drew from the facts.
Mhm.
And then you have to present that paper to some institution. And the institution makes their money by being reliable. When they start publishing stupid stuff, everybody says, forget them. That's a trash magazine. We don't read them anymore.
Yep.
If you want to know the truth, you go to people who are consistently right. And so the publisher becomes sort of a proxy for the credibility of the individual that you don't know.
Yeah.
And then when they discover that they actually did publish something that was false, then they put it up front and center and say, hey, this was wrong. We disavow this. That's not true. But they come clean when they're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Outside of science, because I was a science nerd,
Oh, there you go.
outside of science, you still had to publish. And when I had to write papers as a high school student, we had to always cite our sources. And then rigorous people would check the sources to see, A, if the sources really said what I said they said. And then it would check, B, what's the track record on this source?
Mm.
And before there was an internet, there was a whole ecosystem of people who were always checking up on each other so that you could pretty much count on the consensus having gone through a certain amount of rigor.
Yep.
Internet doesn't have that.
Not at all. And in fact, even when I was in high school and college, the small amount of college I did doing papers and citing sources, they didn't check the validity of the source. They just checked to make sure it wasn't Wikipedia,
Hmm.
and then you're good.
Yeah.
So I could probably pick out a Reddit source and someone would probably approve that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read about how some judges were busting lawyers and saying, "Get out of my courtroom," because they were submitting basic briefs that had been written by ChatGPT. However, ChatGPT itself is not a reliable source. ChatGPT is not making any money based on whether I believe it. It's just wrong. They call it hallucination. Sometimes the AI is wrong.
Yep.
And this guy had submitted something, and his case was citing court cases that did not exist.
Whew, that's bad. That's really bad. Really bad.
So anyway, enough about the internet. You can think about prominent people whom I will not name on this podcast, but you can think of them who are famous for making certain positions. You have to look at their track record. You have to look at what they stand to gain or to lose.
Of course.
Now, when we talk about the witnesses in the Bible, what we're going to have to do is figure out, what do we know about these people? What do they stand to gain or lose based on what they said? We have to look at their track record. How often were they right and how often were they wrong? And we have to look at their integrity. Do their lives demonstrate that they are a people who do not lie?
Yeah. Yeah.
So keep all of that in the back of your head for when we start reading in the Bible again, because we are going to be talking a lot about witnesses when we read the Gospel of John.
Yes, I'm excited to go through. I want to know why John was the witness.
This is Bill.
And I'm Trevor.
And
This has been
Bill and Trevor's Excellent Adventure.